Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're literally walking right up to the edge of the abyss to examine the masterful, deeply chilling script of the Shadow Bard, architect of the Ashen Overture. We're going to zero in specifically on Act 5, titled The Rewriting of the Void. I want you to imagine the curtain rising on a landscape of pure, unadulterated dread, a realm totally choked by ash and silent terror. In this scene, our protagonist, or actually scratch that, our predator, steps onto the stage. And he's not there as some mere entertainer. He arrives as an arrogant architect of lies. It's a terrifying reflection on how those who control the narrative can just rewrite history itself. So let's break down his clinical, highly theatrical descent into the dark.
Okay, let's dive into this. Right from the opening lines, the Shadow Bard establishes his absolute, dripping disdain for the ordinary. He's speaking directly to those he views as the cowering herd, the people still hiding out in their temples, completely terrified of the unknown. Where everyone else sees a desolate wasteland to be feared, he sees an incredible opportunity. He fully embraces the dangerous risks of this threshold. For him, stepping into the void isn't a sin, no way. It's a vital rebellion against the suffocating conformity of a society that is just too afraid to look into the shadows.
To truly grasp this descent, we need to map out the Bard's movements scene by scene. Think of this as our playbill for today. First up, crossing the Ashen Threshold. Second, mocking the trapped Lorekeeper. Third, the Scavenger's Dark Overture. Fourth, forging a recurring nightmare. And finally, Master of the Violet Flame. All right, let the play begin.
Act 1. Crossing the Ashen Threshold.
Picture a tight, cinematic close-up on the Bard's hand, right in the middle of these bleak, ashen wastes. Resting between his fingers is this newly discovered artifact, the key. It's jagged, cold, and translucent. It looks almost like frozen smoke. And it was forged from the cold silence of an abandoned prayer, right there at the edge of the wastes. This key is the absolute catalyst. It allows the Bard to slip into the uncanny valley as effortlessly as a whispered secret passing through a cracked door. This exact moment marks his definitive evolution. He's no longer just a performer. He is actively becoming the master of a world without anchors.
So, what does this all mean? The crucial point here is how he fundamentally redefines his environment. For literally anyone else, the Uncanny Valley is a place of absolute terror. It's a desolate realm you flee from immediately. But the Bard? He claims it as his personal workshop. To him, it's a vast inkwell. With his key in hand, he ensures this valley is no longer a place of rest or some graveyard to be passively mourned. By choosing rebellion over social custom, he takes this terrifying void and turns it into the raw material for his next great deception.
Moving on to Act 2, mocking the trapped Lorekeeper.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the violent contrast it sets up. We shift the camera's focus to a massive, rusted iron gate, and we see two entirely different worldviews colliding. On the left, we have the witness, the Lorekeeper. He's trapped behind social conformity, literally on his knees with bleeding fingers, trying to record the names of the fallen. He is clinging desperately to a truth that is already rotting in the dirt. But on the right, we have the Butcher, the Shadow Bard, looks at these ruins with the cold, clinical detachment of an apex predator. He doesn't see a tragedy to be mourned. To him, truth is merely a carcass. He has zero interest in being a servant to history. He's carving it to his own liking, openly mocking the Lorekeeper's pathetic, passive mourning.
Which brings us to Act 3, the Scavenger's Dark Overture.
The scene changes. The Bard leaves the gate behind and kneels down in a thick, black mire. And his movements aren't panicked like a survivor. They are the methodical, chilling motions of a butcher prepping his instruments. He begins what he calls his Scavenger's Overture. Let's be clear, this is not beautiful music. It is a stubborn, abrasive rebellion against the silence that the fearful herd tries so hard to maintain. He is actively harvesting the raw, visceral agony of the damned. He uses that pain to fuel his songs, creating a lush harvest of narrative toxins. He takes the deep trauma of this desolate realm and completely weaponizes it into a tool for absolute dominance.
And this brilliantly illustrates exactly how the Bard constructs his dark art using linguistic tools and musical metaphors. Look at his methods here. He uses a key from an abandoned prayer to slip into the valley undetected. Then he restrings his bow with the gut of a traitor, cementing that stubborn rebellion. And honestly, most chilling of all, he tunes his viol to the dying breaths of forgotten kings to harvest raw emotion. Every single note he strikes, every twisted metaphor he employs, it all serves to deepen this dark fantasy narrative and poison the world's memory just a little bit further.
All right, Act 4, Forging a Recurring Nightmare.
Let's move on and see how this builds visually. With his Dark Symphony now playing, the bard takes his ultimate step. He deliberately bypasses the why of the world's destruction, he doesn't care about that, and focuses entirely on the mechanics of recreating it. Look at this sequence. Minute 1, the shapeless gray mist of the valley begins to coalesce into terrifying distorted shapes. Crowns, executioner's blocks. Minute 2, the valley actually warps, replacing the drab gray with incredibly vibrant lying colors. Minute 3, that rusted iron gate holding back the Lorekeeper, it dissolves completely into ink. And by minute 4, the bard's shadow grows until it suffocates the entire landscape. He has systematically transformed the uncertainty of existence into a strictly structured recurring nightmare, and he's totally in control.
And so, we arrive at our theatrical climax. Act 5, Master of the Violet Flame.
The old sun has finally, permanently set on the myths of the world. The bard has rewritten reality itself. In this massive theater of ruins, the Lorekeeper, the guy who so desperately tried to record the truth, is now reduced to a mere character in a play he doesn't even recognize. He's just a puppet, bathed only in the artificial violet flame of despair that the bard himself kindled. The arrogance on display here is absolute. The architect of lies stands entirely alone. He is the sole creator, the undisputed master of a history that never truly existed. He's successfully dressed the carcass of truth in his own deceptive silks.
Which brings us to the final curtain of our explainer today. The bard leaves us with this lingering sense of dread and a really chilling taunt that echoes way beyond this fantasy realm. It reminds us of how easily our own histories, our own narratives, can be hijacked by those holding the pen. When the world warps into vibrant lies and the shadows start growing long, we all have to ask ourselves, in this theater of ruins, what rotting truth do you still cling to before the violet flame consumes it? Think on that as the stage goes dark. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive into the void. And remember, keep questioning the script you've been handed.